Most people don't realize they're undervaluing themselves because it doesn't feel dramatic. There's no loud failure, no public collapse. It feels practical, sensible, responsible. It sounds like, I'll wait until I'm more ready. It sounds like, this is good enough for now. It sounds like, at least I'm being realistic. And that's why it's so dangerous, because by the time you notice it, you've already been living below your capacity for years. Undervaluing yourself is not about a lack of talent. It's about a lack of belief in your own responsibility. Responsibility to show up fully. Responsibility to use what you've been given. Responsibility to stop hiding behind excuses that sound reasonable but keep you small. We are taught from a young age to seek approval. From parents, teachers, managers, society. Somewhere along the way, we confuse approval with value, and when approval doesn't come fast enough, we assume our value must be missing. So we lower our expectations. We soften our voice. We shrink our ambition. Not because we don't care, but because we care too much about being accepted. But acceptance was never meant to be the goal. Impact was. Here's what happens when you undervalue yourself. You start saying yes to things that don't align with who you are simply because you're afraid of losing the opportunity. You stay in environments that drain you because they feel familiar. You tolerate behavior you wouldn't accept from yourself, all in the name of keeping the peace. And slowly, almost invisibly, you begin to disconnect from your own sense of purpose. Purpose doesn't disappear, it gets buried. And the tragedy is not that you don't know what you're capable of. Deep down, you do. That quiet discomfort you feel isn't confusion, it's clarity. It's the part of you that knows you're meant for more, not more money, more titles, more praise, but more alignment, more meaning, more integrity between who you say you are and how you live every day. When you undervalue yourself, you send a signal, not just to others, but to yourself. You tell yourself that your time is flexible, your standards are negotiable, and your boundaries are optional. And people respond exactly to the signals you send, not because they're cruel, but because humans follow cues. If you don't protect your value, no one else will do it for you. This is not about ego. This is about leadership. Leadership begins the moment you decide that what you do matters. That how you show up matters, that your voice, your work, your example carry weight. And leadership does not require a title. It requires courage. The courage to act before you feel confident. The courage to speak before you feel certain. The courage to stand firm even when it would be easier to blend in. Confidence is not the starting point. Clarity is clarity about what you stand for. Clarity about what you will no longer tolerate. Clarity about the cost of staying where you are. Because every time you choose comfort over growth, you are making a trade. And the price you pay is always the same. It's yourself. You tell yourself you're being patient, but patience without action is just fear in disguise. You tell yourself you're being humble, but humility does not mean denying your value. It means understanding it clearly and using it in service of something bigger than yourself. Undervaluing yourself doesn't just limit you. It limits the people who could have benefited from your courage. The conversations you didn't start, the ideas you didn't share, the standards you didn't raise, the example you didn't set. Someone else needed to see you choose yourself so they could find the strength to do the same. And this is where the shift must happen in 2026. This year is not about proving yourself to anyone. It's about deciding who you are willing to disappoint. Because growth will disappoint someone. It might be the people who benefited from your silence. It might be the version of you that preferred comfort over truth. But choosing not to grow will disappoint someone too. And that someone is always you. When you finally stop undervaluing yourself, the world doesn't suddenly become easier. It becomes clearer. Your yes means something. Your no carries weight. Your presence changes the room, not because you demand attention, but because you bring intention. You stop asking, am I good enough? And start asking, is this aligned with what I believe? And that question changes everything. It changes the jobs you accept, the relationships you maintain, the goals you pursue, the way you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. Because the loudest voice shaping your future is not society. It's the one in your head. And if that voice keeps telling you to wait, to settle, to play small, then no external success will ever feel like enough. But when that voice finally says, you are responsible for what you do next, something powerful happens. You move. even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's uncertain, even when there are no guarantees. You were never meant to be fully ready. You were meant to be committed to growth over comfort, committed to purpose over popularity, committed to valuing yourself not based on outcomes but on principles. Because when your self-worth is tied to results, you'll always feel behind. But when it's tied to values, you can stand firm even in the middle of uncertainty. So if 2026 is going to mean anything different, it starts here. It starts with the decision to stop negotiating with your potential, to stop treating your calling like a side hobby, to stop waiting for confidence to airy before you act. You don't need more motivation. You need more responsibility. Responsibility to show up as yourself, fully and consistently. Responsibility to stop undervaluing what you bring to the table. Responsibility to live in a way that years from now, you can look back and say, I didn't hide when it mattered. Because the moment you stop undervaluing yourself is the moment you stop living on the edge of your life and finally step into the center of it. There is a moment in everyone's life when the cost of staying the same becomes more painful than the discomfort of change. Most people feel that moment but ignore it. They push it aside with logic, with responsibilities, with the stories they've been telling themselves for years. And one of the most common stories sounds like this: I know my worth, I just don't need to show it yet. But worth that is never exercised slowly fades into doubt. The second way we undervalue ourselves is by confusing potential with permission. We believe that just because we can do something, someone else must first validate that we should. So we wait. We wait for the right title, the right timing, the right confidence, the right external signal that says, now you're allowed. And in that waiting, life keeps moving without us. Permission is a myth we use to stay comfortable. Think about how often you've had an idea you believed in but kept quiet because you weren't sure how it would be received, or how many times you knew what the right decision was but chose the safer one because it kept everyone else happy. These are not small moments, these are defining moments. And when you consistently choose safety over truth, you don't just lose opportunities, you lose trust in yourself. Self-trust is built the same way trust is built with others: through consistency, through follow-through, through doing what you said you would do, even when no one is watching. Every time you betray your own instinct to avoid discomfort, you weaken that trust. And once self-trust erodes, confidence has nothing to stand on. This is why affirmations alone don't work. You can't talk yourself into self-worth. You have to act yourself into it. Self-worth grows when your actions align with your beliefs. When you say you value growth and then choose the hard conversation. When you say you value integrity and then walk away from what compromises it. When you say you value yourself and then stop accepting less than you know you deserve. Undervaluing yourself often shows up as over-explaining. You feel the need to justify your decisions. You soften your boundaries with long explanations so people won't think you're selfish or difficult. But clarity doesn't require justification. When you are clear about what you stand for, your decisions speak for themselves. Strong boundaries are not walls. They are filters. They don't keep people out. They keep alignment in. And the moment you start honoring your boundaries, you send a powerful message, first to yourself, then to everyone else. You say, my time matters, my energy matters, my values are not negotiable. And yes, some people will push back. They always do when the rules change. But resistance is not a sign you're wrong. Often it's a sign you're finally doing something right. The truth is, many people are comfortable with you undervaluing yourself because it makes their lives easier. It makes you more predictable, more accommodating, less threatening. When you step into your worth, you disrupt the dynamic. And disruption feels uncomfortable to those who benefit from the old version of you. But growth has never been about keeping everyone comfortable. It's about becoming congruent when who you are on the inside finally matches how you show up on the outside, when your words, your actions, and your standards point in the same direction. That kind of alignment creates credibility, and credibility is the foundation of influence. Influence doesn't come from demanding respect. It comes from demonstrating self-respect. And self-respect is not loud. It's quiet. It shows up in the decisions you make when there's no applause, in the discipline to say no, even when you're afraid of missing out, in the patience to build something meaningful rather than chasing quick validation. Undervaluing yourself often feels like you're being generous. You give more time, more effort, more emotional labor. But generosity without boundaries leads to resentment. And resentment is a signal that something is out of alignment. It's your inner voice telling you that you've been giving at the expense of F your own well-being. You don't need to give less. You need to value yourself more. Because when you value yourself, you give from abundance, not obligation. You contribute because you choose to, not because you're afraid of being forgotten. And that shift changes the quality of everything you touch. Your work improves. Your relationships deepen. Your leadership strengthens. The reason 2026 matters is not because the calendar changed. It matters because time is not neutral. Every year you delay stepping into your worth, the gap between who you are and who you could be grows wider. And closing that gap later is always harder than closing it now. You don't need to reinvent yourself. You need to reclaim yourself. Reclaim your voice. Reclaim your standards. Reclaim your sense of responsibility for the life you're building. Stop outsourcing your self-worth to outcomes, titles, or approval. Those things can complement your value, but they can never define it. When you finally stop waiting for permission, something shifts. You move with more certainty, not because you have all the answers, but because you trust yourself to figure it out. You take ownership of your decisions instead of blaming circumstances. You lead from conviction rather than comparison. And comparison is one of the fastest ways to undervalue yourself. The moment you measure your progress against someone else's timeline, you ignore your own context, you forget your own journey, you discount your own growth. And no one builds a meaningful life by copying someone else's path. Your path requires presence. It requires intention. It requires the courage to stand alone at times. But standing alone is often the price of standing for something. So if this year is going to be different, it won't be because you worked harder or tried more strategies. It will be because you made one fundamental decision to trust yourself enough to act, to value yourself enough to choose alignment over approval, to stop waiting for permission and start leading from where you are. Because the world doesn't reward hidden value. It responds to lived value. And the moment you decide to live what you believe, rather than just think about it, you stop undervaluing yourself and start becoming the person you were always meant to be. Too many people enter each new year carrying the same quiet, persistent fear, the fear that they are not enough, not smart enough, not skilled enough, not worthy enough. And it's a fear that whispers constantly, shaping the decisions we make, the opportunities we take, and the way we show up in the world. It whispers that our voice is too small, our ideas too weak, our contribution too minor. And over time, that whisper becomes a steady hum of self-doubt, a hum so loud it convinces us that hiding is safer than acting. But hiding has a cost. It costs momentum. It costs growth. It costs a chance to see what you're truly capable of. Every moment you shrink yourself to fit into someone else's idea of comfort. You chip away at the trust you have in yourself. You start believing that your value is conditional, that it depends on someone else's recognition. And the irony is that recognition only comes after you act, not before. The world has a way of rewarding courage over perfection. It rewards people who show up even when the outcome is uncertain. But too often we wait for certainty, for readiness, for a sense of validation that may never arrive. We wait for the perfect moment to speak up, to take the risk, to claim the opportunity. And while we wait, the moment passes, and we are left with regret, wondering what might have been. Undervaluing yourself is not humility. It is the slow erosion of possibility. It is convincing yourself that your ideas, your time, and your energy are negotiable. It is tolerating situations that don't honor your worth because you fear conflict or disappointment. And it is often disguised as practicality, as realism, as patience. But realism without courage is just fear dressed in reason. Every time you undervalue yourself, you send a signal, not just to others, but to yourself. You tell yourself that your time is cheap, your standards are flexible, and your contribution is optional. And people respond to signals. If you send the signal that you are negotiable, that you are flexible, that you can be diminished, the world will respond exactly in kind. It's not malicious, it's human nature. People follow cues, and the cues you send to yourself are the most powerful of all. So the first step to breaking this pattern is to take ownership of your own value, To recognize that self-worth is not something that is given. It is something you decide to exercise. It is something you defend. It is something you demonstrate through your actions. Every time you honor your own voice, every time you insist on alignment between your values and your choices, you reinforce your worth, not to prove it to others, but to prove it to yourself. And the beautiful thing about exercising value is that it creates a ripple effect. When you act in accordance with your principles, others around you begin to respond differently. Standards shift. Expectations rise. Opportunities appear that would have been invisible if you had continued to shrink. The world doesn't just notice courage, it mirrors it. When you stop undervaluing yourself, you give permission for others to do the same. Self-respect is not a state of arrogance or entitlement. It is the quiet, consistent practice of setting boundaries, making deliberate choices, and refusing to compromise on the essentials. It is saying no when it matters. It is stepping forward when it matters. It is walking away from anything that diminishes your integrity, and it is rarely dramatic. Most of the time, it is subtle, persistent, and invisible, like the steady beat of a drum guiding the rhythm of your life. But there is always resistance. There always will be. Some people will feel threatened by your growth. Some will challenge your standards. Some will test your boundaries. And that is exactly why it matters. Growth is uncomfortable not because it is wrong, but because it disrupts complacency. It disrupts the patterns that keep everyone, including you, small. And if you can learn to embrace the discomfort rather than flee from it, you will discover that it is actually a compass pointing you toward alignment, fulfillment, and influence. Confidence is often misunderstood. It is not the prerequisite for action. It is the byproduct of action. Confidence grows when you step into what scares you, when you show up even when the outcome is uncertain, when you honor your commitments to yourself and the people depending on you. Waiting for confidence to arrive before you act is a trap. The trap keeps you safe, but also invisible, untested, and unrealized. Every day you undervalue yourself, you are negotiating with mediocrity. You are agreeing, often unconsciously, to a life that falls short of your potential. You are accepting the familiar over the challenging, the comfortable over the transformative, the quiet over the remarkable. And the tragic part is, the familiar always feels safer, until you realize that safety has been slowly stealing your purpose all along. The world is not built for people who shrink. It is built for people who take responsibility. Responsibility to lead where they are. Responsibility to speak when they know something matters. Responsibility to act when action is required. Responsibility to honor their own standards, even when doing so makes others uncomfortable. Because influence comes not from pleasing everyone, but from being consistently aligned with what you know to be true. Alignment is the antidote to undervaluing yourself. When your actions match your beliefs, your words match your deeds, and your boundaries reflect your principles, you no longer ask for permission. You simply act, and the results follow. Not always in the way you expect, but often in ways that expand your impact, deepen your relationships, and strengthen your sense of purpose. Comparison is another subtle thief of self-worth. Measuring your progress against someone else's achievements convinces you that you are behind, even when you are exactly where you need to be. Your path is unique. Your timing is yours. Your journey is not defined by someone else's milestones. And the sooner you internalize that, the sooner you stop diminishing your own contribution. 2026 is a pivotal year because it represents a choice to continue operating under old patterns or to step into the responsibility of valuing yourself fully. It is not about luck. It is not about talent. It is about commitment. The commitment to honor your potential, defend your boundaries, and act in alignment with what you know to be right. Because every moment you spend undervaluing yourself is a moment the world misses the full expression of what only you can offer. You were never meant to wait for the perfect conditions. You were meant to move forward with courage, to act with conviction, to trust yourself enough to navigate uncertainty. And as you practice valuing yourself consistently, you discover that fear does not disappear. It becomes fuel. It becomes the signal that you are on the edge of growth. It becomes the reminder that you are doing something that matters. When you finally stop undervaluing yourself, life doesn't suddenly become easier, but it becomes clearer. Your decisions are sharper. Your presence carries weight. Your influence grows. Your alignment deepens. And you experience a kind of freedom that is rare in this world. The freedom of knowing, without doubt, that you are operating from the full measure of your own value. So as you look toward 2026, remember this. No one can assign you your worth. No one can validate the size of your potential. That responsibility has always belonged to you. And the moment you accept it, the moment you act on it, the moment you stop hiding behind excuses and fears, you finally begin to live in full alignment with who you were meant to be. Most people walk through life quietly, never realizing the full impact of how much they undervalue themselves. It starts subtly, almost imperceptibly. You say yes when you want to say no. You hold back your ideas because someone else might judge them. You accept less than you deserve because it seems easier than risking disappointment. Each small concession feels insignificant in isolation, but over time, they accumulate into a life lived beneath your capacity. And the danger isn't just that you fail to reach your potential, it's that you start believing you don't deserve it. Undervaluing yourself often masquerades as humility. We tell ourselves that modesty is virtuous, that self-restraint demonstrates character, but humility without self-respect becomes self-erasure. It convinces you that your contributions are optional, that your voice is negotiable, and that your presence is secondary. And when you live under those assumptions long enough, you begin to internalize them. Your self-perception shrinks, and your expectations for life become constrained by the opinions of others rather than the measure of your own value. The world will never assign you the recognition you deserve unless you first recognize it in yourself. This is the paradox. Validation is powerful, but it is not the starting point. It is a consequence of action, alignment, and courage. When you undervalue yourself, you delay action. You hesitate to share your ideas, to assert your boundaries, to ask for what you deserve. And in that delay, opportunities pass, influence fades, and self-trust erodes. Every time you act against your own instincts, you diminish the authority of your own judgment. Every time you acquiesce to someone else's expectations at the expense of your principles, you teach yourself that your time, energy, and voice are optional. And people pick up on those cues. Others mirror the way you treat yourself. If you undervalue yourself, the world will undervalue you. It's not a punishment, it's a reflection. And the only way to change it is to change the signal you send. Valuing yourself requires clarity about what you stand for, clarity about what you will no longer compromise, clarity about the boundaries that protect your energy, your integrity, and your purpose. And clarity is not passive. It requires examination, reflection, and courage. It requires asking hard questions. Am I acting from fear or from principle? Am I shrinking to avoid conflict? Am I trading long-term fulfillment for short-term comfort? When you confront these questions honestly, you begin to reclaim agency over your life. You realize that self-worth is not given, it is chosen. It is exercised through the decisions you make, the standards you uphold, and the courage you summon to act in alignment with your values. And as you consistently honor that worth, confidence grows, not as a prerequisite, but as a natural byproduct. The problem is that most people wait for confidence to arrive before they act. They wait for permission, validation, or perfect conditions. But life is not designed to wait for anyone. Opportunities come and go, moments of impact are fleeting, and the longer you wait, the more you diminish your own potential. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to act despite it. Confidence comes after action, not before. Every time you undervalue yourself, you are negotiating with mediocrity. You are agreeing to live a life that falls short of your potential. You are settling for comfort instead of growth. You are allowing the familiar to dictate your choices instead of the meaningful. And the longer this pattern continues, the harder it becomes to break. Fear accumulates, regret compounds, and the gap between who you are and who you could be widens. Undervaluing yourself also impacts those around you. The ideas you withhold, the leadership you defer, the standards you fail to uphold. These are not just losses for you, they are losses for everyone who could have benefited from your courage. Your hesitation has a ripple effect. By shrinking yourself, you reduce the possibilities for others to rise, to be challenged, to grow, and influence is never exercised in isolation. It begins with the willingness to value yourself enough to act, speak, and lead authentically. Boundaries are a critical part of this equation. They are not walls that keep people out. They are filters that ensure alignment. Boundaries communicate value. They protect your energy and reinforce your standards. Saying no is not selfish. It is essential. And saying yes selectively is not limiting, it is powerful. The moment you define and enforce your boundaries, you set the stage for respect, both from yourself and from others. Resistance is inevitable. Some people will push back. Some will feel uncomfortable with the changes they see in you. And that discomfort is natural because your growth disrupts their equilibrium. But disruption is not the enemy. It is the signal that you are moving in the right direction. Real progress rarely feels comfortable. True alignment is often challenging, but it is always transformative. Comparison is another subtle way we undervalue ourselves. We measure our worth against the achievements, accolades, and timelines of others, forgetting that our journey is unique. Our context is different. Our strengths, experiences, and timing are entirely our own. The moment you internalize that truth, the moment you stop measuring yourself against others, you reclaim ownership of your life, your growth, and your trajectory. 2026 is an opportunity to break these patterns. It is a call to stop negotiating with your potential, to stop shrinking in the presence of fear or judgment, to stop waiting for external validation, to tell you what you already know, that your ideas, your time, and your contributions are valuable. The choice is simple but not easy. It is simple because the path is clear. Act in alignment with your worth. It is not easy because it requires courage, consistency, and confrontation with uncomfortable truths. The moment you commit to valuing yourself, life begins to change. Not because circumstances magically improve, but because your perspective shifts. You make decisions with intention. You invest in what aligns with your principles. You show up fully, regardless of uncertainty. And as you act from this place of integrity, confidence grows, influence deepens, and fulfillment expands. Self-worth is not static. It is a practice. It is exercised daily through choice, reflection, and action. It is defended in moments of challenge, reinforced in moments of success, and modeled consistently through example. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. The more natural it becomes, the less likely you are to undervalue yourself, and the more capable you are of creating impact. Ultimately, undervaluing yourself is a decision to live beneath your capacity. And the most profound realization you can have in 2026 is that you can choose differently. You can choose to honor your potential, assert your boundaries, act with courage, and live in alignment with your values. And in doing so, you not only transform your own life, you inspire others to do the same. The world does not need you to shrink. It does not need you to wait for permission or seek external validation. It needs you to stand firmly in your worth, consistently, courageously, and unapologetically. When you do, you not only stop undervaluing yourself, you begin to live the life you were always capable of leading. Most people enter a new year carrying with them the same invisible weight, the habit of undervaluing themselves. It is quiet, persistent, and insidious. It whispers that your ideas are too small, your voice is too soft, your contributions are optional. And because it whispers rather than shouts, you rarely notice it until the consequences are undeniable. Opportunities pass you by, relationships remain unfulfilled, and the gap between who you are and who you could be grows wider with every compromise. Undervaluing yourself is not about arrogance or ego. It is not about believing you are better than anyone else. It is about believing you are less than you truly are. It is about assuming that your time, energy, and talents are negotiable and that the world will always accommodate your hesitation. And when you live this way, even if subtly, the impact is profound. It doesn't just affect what you achieve, it shapes how others perceive and interact with you. Because people mirror the value you assign to yourself. One of the first ways undervaluing yourself manifests is through waiting. You wait to speak up, to take a risk, to ask for what you deserve. You wait for confidence, for permission, for circumstances to align perfectly. And while you wait, life moves on without you. Opportunities that could have been yours are claimed by those willing to step forward despite fear. Confidence is not a prerequisite, it is a consequence. It is built through action, not contemplation. Waiting for it to appear before you act is the single most common barrier to realizing your potential. Another way undervaluing yourself shows up is through compromise disguised as practicality. You soften your voice so others are comfortable. You lower your standards so you won't be seen as difficult. You tolerate disrespect in the name of opportunity or harmony. And over time, those compromises teach you to accept less than you are worth. They quietly erode self-trust. Every time you settle for less than your principles demand, you weaken the foundation of the life you are meant to build. Boundaries are essential to combating this pattern. Boundaries are not barriers. They are declarations of self-respect. They are the lines that protect your energy, your focus, and your integrity. Saying no is not selfish, it is an acknowledgement of value. Saying yes selectively is not limiting, it is empowering. Every boundary you establish reinforces your worth to yourself and signals to others that you are to be taken seriously. The world responds not to your intentions, but to your actions, and boundaries are a powerful action. Resistance will come. Some will be uncomfortable when you claim your worth. Some will test your resolve. But this resistance is not evidence that you are wrong. It is evidence that you are stepping into a space where growth and transformation are possible. Change is uncomfortable, particularly for those who benefit from the old patterns. Their discomfort is a natural reaction to your decision to act differently, to value yourself differently, to refuse to shrink. Comparison is another silent thief of self-worth. Measuring yourself against the achievements of others convinces you that you are behind, even when you are progressing steadily on your own path. Your journey is unique with its own timing, context, and circumstances. The moment you stop measuring against someone else's milestones, you reclaim ownership of your story. You stop undervaluing yourself and begin to evaluate progress on your own terms, in alignment with your own values. Self-worth is built through consistency. It is reinforced by the decisions you make when no one is watching. It grows each time you act in alignment with your principles, even when the outcome is uncertain. It is exercised through repeated choices to honor your voice, protect your boundaries, and pursue your purpose. Confidence grows from these choices, not the other way around. Action precedes certainty. Clarity, courage, and commitment build self-worth from the inside out. Undervaluing yourself also affects those around you. The ideas you withhold, the leadership you defer, the standards you fail to uphold. These are losses not only for you, but for everyone who could have benefited from your influence. Your hesitation diminishes opportunity, lowers expectations, and limits growth for others. Influence is never exercised in isolation. By valuing yourself, you create permission for others to rise, to challenge, and to grow alongside you. The cost of undervaluing yourself is not abstract. It is measurable. It is the time wasted on inaction, the potential unfulfilled, the relationships compromised, the ideas never shared. It is the quiet regret that comes at night when you wonder what might have been. And the longer you wait to change, the more expensive that cost becomes. The gap between who you are and who you could be widens, and closing it later demands more courage, more energy, and more sacrifice than acting now. 2026 is an opportunity. It is not just a change of calendar, it is a call to action. It is a chance to stop negotiating with your potential, to stop shrinking to accommodate others, and to stop waiting for permission to claim your worth. This year asks you to step fully into your value, to act in alignment with your principles, to trust yourself enough to take the actions your growth demands. It asks you to live courageously, consistently, and unapologetically. The decision to value yourself begins with one choice: to act, to show up fully even when fear is present, to speak up even when your voice shakes, to assert your boundaries even when it causes friction, to pursue opportunities even when certainty is absent. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act in spite of it. Confidence follows action. Self-respect follows courage. And influence follows self-respect. Once you commit to this path, everything shifts. Your decisions carry intention. Your presence carries weight. Your influence expands. You begin to operate from alignment rather than convenience, from principles rather than fear. And in that alignment, freedom emerges. Freedom from doubt, freedom from the NED for constant approval. Freedom from the patterns that have kept you small, the freedom to live and lead according to the measure of your true value. Undervaluing yourself is ultimately a choice, and so is the alternative. You can choose courage over comfort, action over hesitation, alignment over acquiescence, and growth over stagnation. The choice is not easy, but it is simple. It requires consistent attention, reflection, and deliberate action. It requires confronting fear and taking responsibility for your own life and worth. And it requires the awareness that you are the most powerful advocate for your own potential. No one can assign your worth. No one can validate your potential. That responsibility has always belonged to you. And the moment you accept it, the moment you act on it, the moment you stop waiting and start leading, you begin to live fully, you stop shrinking, you stop compromising, you stop undervaluing yourself. And in doing so, you step into a life of purpose, alignment, and influence, a life that 2026 was waiting for you to claim. The truth is, undervaluing yourself has never served you. It has only limited your impact, delayed your growth, and muted the potential that already exists within you. Every day you minimize your own worth, you are not being realistic or humble. You are trading possibility for comfort. You are agreeing to live a life smaller than the one you are capable of leading. And the cost of that choice is far higher than most people realize. It costs momentum, it costs opportunity, and it costs the trust you have in yourself. The world does not reward hesitation. It rewards action. It rewards courage. It rewards people who decide, despite fear, to stand fully in their value. You do not need permission to be your best self. You do not need validation from others to step into your power. You already possess everything required to lead, to create, and to contribute. Confidence is not the prerequisite. It is the consequence. Clarity is the starting point. Once you understand the worth that has always been yours, once you commit to acting in alignment with your values, everything changes. The whispers of self-doubt grow quieter. The noise of external expectations fades, and what emerges is a sense of certainty that comes not from accolades, not from approval, but from living in alignment with your principles. Boundaries, consistency, and courage are your allies in this journey. Boundaries protect your energy and reinforce the respect you deserve. Consistency builds self-trust, proving to ourself that you are reliable, capable, and committed to your own growth. Courage allows you to act even when fear is present, to speak even when your voice shakes, to step forward even when the outcome is uncertain. These are the tools that will dismantle the patterns of undervaluing yourself and allow your potential to flourish. The ripple effect of valuing yourself is profound. The moment you stop shrinking, the moment you stop compromising for comfort, you not only elevate your own life, you elevate the lives of those around you. You create a space where others are inspired to rise, to act courageously, and to lead authentically. Your influence grows not because you demand it, but because you model it. You stop asking for permission and start giving others permission to do the same by simply being fully who you are. 2026 is a blank canvas. It is not just another year. It is an opportunity to decide once and for all that you will no longer undervalue yourself. The choice is yours. You can continue negotiating with mediocrity, shrinking to avoid discomfort, and waiting for the perfect moment that will never arrive. Or you can step into responsibility, act with courage, and live aligned with your worth. The difference is profound. One path leads to regret and limitation. The other leads to growth, fulfillment, and influence beyond what you imagined. So step forward, speak up, assert your boundaries, take the risks that matter. Trust yourself to navigate uncertainty, and do it unapologetically. The world does not need another person hiding their potential. It needs people who are willing to see their own value, embrace it, and live it fully. The moment you decide to stop undervaluing yourself is the moment everything begins to change. The moment you stop shrinking, start leading, and finally live the life you were always capable of living.